documentary called Hapi. Hapi deals with the role of economics on the development of civilization. Okay, and we're going to talk to Professor James Small about the film. Hapi will deal with some African history, and we'll talk about some current events also. On last week's show, we were joined by another one of my teachers, Dr. Leonard Jeffries. Okay, and that was a fantastic show. Got a lot of positive feedback from that one. So we'll give an update on what's going on with coronavirus also. Coronavirus, over 500,000 deaths worldwide. And we see that the U.S. infections break one-day record. We've seen that Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The U.S. was breaking records, almost 45,000, actually 45,942 new coronavirus cases were reported on Friday, and that was driven by the 8,000 new cases in Florida and thousands more in Texas, Arizona, and California. Okay, so we're going to give you some information dealing with that. And we see that the virus surges among younger people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. There was a report from the New York Times that I talked about in my Saturday briefing on my Saturday update that I did on coronavirus. And it's showing some disturbing new trends. And then also we see that Governor Ron DeSantis came out in the last couple of days and said that the increase in the coronavirus cases in Florida is due to younger people not practicing social distancing. Very interesting. Okay. Let me see if we can grab that. Let's see. Where's that article? Florida's DeSantis attributes new cases to young people ignoring social distancing. Florida's Governor Ron DeSantis attributes new cases to young people ignoring social distancing. Okay. So that is, check out the updates from the Washington Post. Washington Post has good updates. I read them every day dealing with coronavirus, as well as New York Times. I read their updates dealing with coronavirus also. And then NBCnews.com has really good updates as well. So NBC News is a free news source. New York Times and Washington Post usually require a subscription to read multiple articles, but a lot of their coronavirus information they are providing for free. Okay, so we'll give you some updates there. We see Texas and Florida, the governors have closed bars and are reversing the reopening process. We also see that Governor Gavin Newsom of California has ordered bars closed in 7 counties. I think it was 7 counties in California. There was a breaking news story dealing with that. Now, there was a bombshell story that the New York Times dropped on Friday, June 26. Russia secretly offered Afghan militants bounties to kill U.S. troops. Russia secretly offered Afghan militants bounties to kill U.S. troops, intelligence says. This is a bombshell article and bombshell reporting by the New York Times. All the other media outlets have picked this up. Many have verified this information, including NBC News. Okay. The Trump administration has been deliberating for months about what to do about a stunning intelligence assessment. Now, as can be expected, Donald Trump came out and said that he was not briefed on this information. Associated Press is reporting this June 28th, 2020. Trump denies briefing on reported bounties against U.S. troops. If you follow me on my Facebook fan page, The African History Network, you know I post all these articles and keep you up to date on what's going on with this information. And this is an example of how elections have consequences. So anybody who has family members, loved ones, friends in the U.S. military, you should be afraid. And at the very same time, I heard Senator Lindsey Graham, who chairs the Senate Intelligence Committee. Yeah, the lack of intelligence, Lindsey Graham chairs the Senate Intelligence Committee. He came out and said that they need to investigate, something to the effect they need to investigate this, get to the bottom of it. Now, what's going to be very interesting and really hypocritical, as Republican senators start to comment on these allegations, if these allegations are proven to be true and they have not been refuted, not refuted with evidence yet, if this stuff proves to be true, then we have a number of problems, because these Republican senators had the opportunity to remove Donald Trump from office in the U.S. Senate impeachment trial that took place February 2020. February 5th, 2020, I think it was the day they voted, either February 5th or February 6th. They had the opportunity, all the evidence was there already, okay? And many of them said that, you know, he did wrong, but it did not rise to the level of impeachment. Does this rise to the level of impeachment? Show me where the level is. They had the opportunity to remove Trump from office and they didn't do it. So whatever penalty Trump has to pay and whatever backlash he gets, they should get it also. Because you had the opportunity to remove him from office and you knew he did wrong. You stood on the Senate floor and almost none of the U.S. senators could condone what he did. But they said it was wrong, but did not rise to the level to remove him from office. Does this rise to the level? So we'll talk a little bit about this in later in the second hour. Okay. Bombshell reporting, New York Times, Malcolm Nance was on AM Joy, MSNBC on I think it was the 28th, June 28th. We have that clip from MSNBC AM Joy. You have to hear that one. So we'll deal with some of these topics. And then also I saw a really good article. You know, last week we talked some about Juneteenth and Black Wall Street. And Donald Trump had his super spreader event in Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? Well, there was a really good article from NBC News that dealt with from Juneteenth to the Tulsa Massacre, and is dealing with how this type of information is not being taught in school. School children are not learning in general across the country. School children are not learning this type of information in school. And they talk about the negative impact it has on society. From Juneteenth to the Tulsa Massacre, what isn't taught in classrooms has a profound impact. This is a good article by Daniela Silva for NBCnews.com. We'll talk a little bit about that as well. All right. So on the African History Network show, we focus on educating, empowering, and inspiring people of African descent throughout the diaspora and around the world, because right knowledge corrects wrong behavior. What you do for yourself, what you do to yourself, and what you allow the people to do to you and get away with is based upon what you think about yourself. What you think about yourself is based upon what you haven't taught about yourself. What you've been taught about yourself is based upon everything you've read, heard, and seen about yourself. So when you control the radius of a man's thoughts, you can control the circumference of his actions, because the mind can't do or teach what it doesn't know. Now, we deal with a number of different topics here on the show. We deal with current events in history and politics, education, economic empowerment, entrepreneurship, relationships, love, sex, health issues, and much, much more. Sign up for our email newsletter. Text the word KEMET, KEMET, to 22828. To sign up for our email newsletter, text the word KEMET, KEMET, to 22828 to sign up for our email newsletter. Also, visit our website, AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. AfricanHistoryNetwork.com. You can sign up for the email newsletter there as well. If you like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $, the AHN Show through Cash App, $, the AHN Show through Cash App. Also through PayPal, paypal.me/the AHN Show, paypal.me/the AHN Show as well through PayPal. All right. Okay, I know we're coming up here on a break in a few minutes. We're going to jump into some of these topics here. Let's look at some updates, some of the latest updates from the Washington Post. So we see global cases of coronavirus exceed 10 million. We see reported cases of COVID-19 worldwide past the 10 million milestone on June 28th, Sunday, June 28th, 2020. India and Brazil accounted for more than a third of new cases in the past week. Now, confirmed cases in the United States surpassed 2.5 million on Sunday, June 28th, as a crushing new wave of infections continued to bear down throughout the country, south and west. Now, more than 50% of African Americans live in the South. And we're in Alabama, Mississippi, Georgia, South Carolina, you know, and when a lot of these white Republican governors wanted to go ahead and reopen, and when you look at what's so egregious about this is that the reopening, the process they went through reopening, they didn't even follow the White House's own guidelines on reopening the country. Most of these states that opened too soon, they didn't have 14 consecutive days of declining reported COVID-19 cases. They didn't even follow the guidelines from the White House for reopening the country. And look at what happened. So confirmed coronavirus cases in the United States surpassed 2.5 million on Sunday as a crushing new wave of infections continue to bear down throughout the country's south and west. Across the nation, 40,587 new daily cases were reported. Now, we know that on Friday, 45,942 cases were reported. And that number was a single day increase that single day increase was driven by more than 8,000 new cases in Florida and thousands more in Texas, Arizona, and California, according to a NBC News tally. The U.S. set a new grim record in the number of new coronavirus cases in a single day. That was on Friday, Friday, June 26. And then we also saw that Vice President Mike Pence had postponed appearances that were planned in Arizona and Florida that were going to take place this coming week, quote, out of an abundance of caution, end quote, due to the virus spikes in those states. An official with President Donald Trump's campaign said Saturday. Well, where was that abundance of caution? I find it very interesting. You go to Tulsa, Oklahoma, right? And you didn't exhibit that abundance of caution there. You didn't even require the people to wear a mask to come into Donald Trump's super spreader rally. Most of them didn't practice social distancing. Even though they gave out masks, most of the people didn't wear them. So where was the abundance of caution there? Then Vice President Mike Pence, on Friday, they had the first coronavirus task force meeting in 60 days. I mean, if you stop having coronavirus task force meetings, you would think they actually defeated coronavirus. That's not true. No, Donald Trump just gave up because he doesn't know what to do. He can't tweet it away. He can't happy talk it away. He can't bully coronavirus. He can't sue coronavirus. So he doesn't know what to do. So they just stopped having coronavirus task force meetings, just hoping it will go away. Because and you remember going back to March, February. Trump said there are 15 cases now. Pretty soon it'll be down to 0. And he said when summertime comes, it's just going to wash away. You remember that? Summer's here. Hello. Summer solstice hits June 21st. Summer's here. It's not going away. It's getting worse. Then Florida, Texas, and Arizona are emerging as the country's latest epicenters after reporting record numbers of new infections for weeks in a row, for weeks in a row. Positivity rates and hospitalizations have also spiked. Imagine that. On Sunday, June 28th, Arizona had 3,857 new cases. Georgia, 2,225 new cases. These both hit new one-day case highs. Now, early in the week, Donald Trump said, I think it was this past week, maybe the week before, Donald Trump said the reason why they have so many new cases in the U.S. is because they're doing more testing. No, that's not the reason why, because the infection rate is increasing. The reason why there are more new cases is because a lot of people are not practicing social distancing, not wearing masks, wrong information coming from the White House. Following Donald Trump's logic, and I know we're coming up on a break, JT, I'm about to hit this break right now. Following Donald Trump's logic, that's like saying if we stop testing for pregnancy, we won't have any pregnancies. That's not true. You're still going to have the symptoms of pregnancy. And 9 months later, the baby's still going to come. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. Superstation of Future Radio. We're going to be joined by Professor James Small in a few minutes. 9:10 a.m. Superstation of Future Radio. I'm Michael Imhotep. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, stand by, everybody. We're on break. Listen to the African History Network show. How's everybody doing? Everybody share this broadcast on your Facebook page. Invite your friends to tune in. We're also broadcasting on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. So you can share this broadcast on Facebook and YouTube. Okay, stand by. We're on break here. Watch the broadcast that I did Saturday, June 27th, because I have more time to break this information down. And I gave you sources. But this is an example of how elections have consequences. Okay, how's everybody doing? So on Facebook, YouTube, everybody share this information. You ain't gonna get this type of information a lot of other places. Okay, now also, we see global cases of COVID-19 exceeded 10 million. And that's according to the count by Johns Hopkins University. We're going to squeeze in some more of this information dealing with COVID-19 and look at some more of these live updates. Let's see here what I want to go to. All right, that's good. Okay, Friday, we saw the U.S. set a grim new record in the number of new coronavirus cases in a single day, adding nearly 46,000 on Friday. It was 45,942 on Friday. Single day increase driven by more than 8,000 new cases in Florida and thousands more in Texas, Arizona, and California, according to the NBC Newsday total. Now, among all states, Arizona has seen the highest per capita rate of coronavirus cases in the last 2 weeks. Among all 50 states, the state of Arizona has seen the highest per capita rate of coronavirus cases in the last 2 weeks, logging more than 400 new cases per 100,000 residents. The infection rate is increasing, okay? The infection rate is increasing. Okay, so they're not having more cases because they're doing more testing. Because if social distancing was being practiced and masks were being worn and proper precautions were being taken, you could have more tests and you can have less cases because the infection rate decreases. That's not what's taking place. Now, Arizona has 7 million residents, and it's 30,000 plus new cases in that time period only fall short of the increases in California, Texas, and Florida. Okay, now read the article from NBCnews.com. Originally it was called U.S. Coronavirus Infections Break Record, hit nearly 46,000 in a single day. But it was updated, and it looks like the new title is U.S. Coronavirus Cases Break Record as Pence Cancels Campaign Events in 2 states. Now, hopefully you all saw the Coronavirus Task Force meeting on Friday, okay, June 26th, and we shared it live on our Facebook fan page, the African History Network. Go back and watch that. Mike Pence was hemmed up, and he was asked the question, something to the effect, one of the reporters asked, why are you having thousands of people come to these campaign rallies for Donald Trump? And they're potentially being exposed to coronavirus and not wearing masks. You're not mandating that they're wearing masks. They're not social distancing. In fact, the report just came out last couple of days that at the rally in Tulsa, the markers on the floor for social distancing, the Trump campaign took the tape up for social distancing. So you see, once again, this is lack of leadership. This is how elections have consequences. It's one thing to be on the campaign trail and talk all that nonsense, build the wall, lock her up, things like that. It's another thing to actually have to govern, right? So we see all this thing, but Pence was asked a question, and we'll have Professor James Small here in a few minutes. He's going to be calling in online, guest line 2, it should be. He was asked the question, why are you having people come to these rallies? Mike Pence cited the First Amendment. They have a First Amendment right? They have a First Amendment. This is freedom of expression. Okay. Now keep in mind, people had to sign a waiver that if they got sick, if they died, what have you, they or their family members, whatever, are not going to sue the Trump campaign and other entities if they get coronavirus, get sick, what have you, right? So, you know, and then today in Texas, Mike Pence is not advocating people wear masks. Where before, when he was defending, previously he hadn't been advocating that. He overtly came out and said people, among these other things, people need to wear a mask. Okay, so it's going to be interesting to see if Donald Trump does the same thing. All right. Let's go to this one here from New York Times. And let's see, JT, let me know when we have Professor James Small on the line. New York Times had a big article from June 25th, updated June 27th. As virus surges, younger people account for a disturbing number of cases. As virus surges, younger people. Oh, hold on. Okay.
He is good to go, sir.
Okay, he's good to go. All right. We'll bring him on in just a second. Hold tight, Professor Small. Okay, as virus surges, younger people account for a disturbing number of cases. So people in their 20s, 30s, and 40s account for a growing proportion of the cases in many places, raising fears that asymptomatic young people are helping to fuel the spread of coronavirus. So younger people are making up a growing percentage of new coronavirus cases in cities and states where the virus is now surging, a trend that has alarmed public health officials and prompted reviewed pleas for mask and social distancing. Now, a lot of this surge also has to do with Memorial Day weekend. NBCnews.com had a really good article dealing with this and how a lot of people were going out partying and things like this. And I understand people being cooped up, et cetera. But as I drive around Detroit, I'm looking at people just acting like everything's all right. And I'm like, Detroit's going to be hit with a spike. I see it coming. Detroit's going to be hit with a spike because I'm seeing people just being real lax. OK, and some people are wearing masks, but they're wearing them around their chins. So in Arizona, where drive-up sites are overwhelmed by people seeking coronavirus tests, people ages 20 to 44 account for nearly half of all cases in the state of Arizona. People ages 20 to 44 account for nearly half of all cases. Now, just a few months ago, White House administration was saying, well, you know, if you're younger, you're really not affected by coronavirus. They forgot to talk about people who are younger with pre-existing conditions, 20s, 30s, and 40s, like diabetes, heart disease, high blood pressure, lupus. That's a lot of African Americans, in their 20s, 30s, and 40s that have pre-existing conditions. OK, and then the report just came out in the past couple of days that women who are pregnant are 5 times as likely to get coronavirus because their immune system is compromised when they're pregnant. Now, in the state of Florida, which breaks records for new coronavirus cases nearly daily, the median age of residents testing positive for coronavirus has dropped to 35 from 65 in March. Median, and we're going to bring Professor Small on just a second here. Median is a statistical measure. It's the point where 50% of the population is above that point and 50% of the population is below that point. OK, so now in the state of Florida, the median age of coronavirus of people who get coronavirus, it was 65 in March, meaning 50% of the population who got coronavirus was above 65, older than 65. Now it's dropped down to 35. I'm telling you, I'm going to be wearing I don't know when I'm going to stop wearing my mask. I wear a KN95 mask. I don't wear these little blue surgical masks. I wear a KN95 mask. I don't know the next time I'm flying. I'm telling you, I'm not going anywhere. because I'm looking at this and it's going to get worse. All right. So we want to welcome back to the African History Network show. One of my teachers, one of our Grandmaster Scholar warriors, known as brother for years, interviewed him a number of times. And we're in a couple of documentaries, at least a couple of I know we're in Elementary Genocide Part 3 from director Raheem Shabazz. We're in that documentary together. But he's in a new documentary called Hapi from director Taki Grant. And Hapi deals with the role of economics on the development of civilization. We want to welcome back to the African History Network show, Professor James Small. Hotep, Professor James Small, how you doing tonight, brother?
I'm good, brother. Michael, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm all right, man. It's just, bro, it's a lot going on and staying abreast of all this and informing our people on this, brother. So it's a lot going on, brother. But other than that, I'm good, man. It was good talking to you earlier today also.
Yeah, same here.
Absolutely.
It's just the world, Michael.
You said it's what?
It's the world. It's just the world.
It's just the world.
Other thing in the world. Mm-hmm.
Exactly. I understand that. Well, look, brother, I saw the documentary Hapi. I saw a private screening of it, and it's fantastic as usual. I knew you were going to be on point in the documentary. And when you and Dr. Leonard Jeffries teach, you all are two of my teachers, and I incorporate this into my teaching. You all talk about the pyramid principle, and you talk about how our history and culture gives us our VIPs, our values, our interests, and our principles. And this influences our economic empowerment, our economics, as well as our political empowerment, our politics. And, a pyramid has three sides. And that fits perfectly right into this documentary, Hapi. So let us know, give us a synopsis, give us an overview of what this documentary is about.
Right. We know the word happy is the ancient African name for Kemet, or the place the Europeans call Egypt. I mean, Hapi is the name of that river, the Nile River.
The Nile River, right.
Right. And it's called, the Nile is called by multiple names, but it's called Hapi when it floods and it brings the silt from down in Africa into the banks of the desert and cause the land to become very fertile. And that happens once a year. But when that happens, the Nile Valley is able to produce surplus crops. And in producing surplus crops, they can feed themselves and they have food, barley, wheat, vegetables, to trade with other people. They also have the land to herd their sheep and their cattle. And again, to come up with surplus foods like milk and cheese and meat that they can share with other people. And the wealth that derived from the Hapi River, the Nile River, produced such an economic boom, it allowed for the ancient Africans to build the enormous civilizations that last for thousands of years, probably tens of thousands of years. And so we're looking at that phenomena of the Hapi River, that source that produced the conditions that allow a community to create a wealth, that it can provide for itself food, clothing, shelter, and safety, that it can take control of the economic, politics, and culture of where they live, and that they were totally, because of this, in charge of the land, the labor, and resources. And this is how they took their riches that came from the soil, turned it into wealth that built a civilization that is still influencing the world today. So the question is, how do we look at the concept of the Hapi River being the source of economic development in ancient Kemet, and find the Hapi River in Detroit? Where's the Hapi River in LA? Where's the Hapi River in Chicago or New York or Miami or Atlanta? Now, the Hapi River doesn't necessarily mean a body of water.
Mm-hmm.
It means the thing that brings the resources that allow a people to develop an economic foundation under themselves and their communities so that they can thrive and prosper. And if we could do that today, police brutality won't be an issue because we would have the economic, politics, and cultural control in the communities we live in. And if you have those controls, you can determine who's the police and how they police.
Exactly.
Right. But if you don't have that power, outside forces determine who's the police and how they police. And here we are. And so we're looking at the economic phenomena of ancient Kemet that was afforded by the inundation of that river that brought the silk from down in Ethiopia and Uganda and Mozambique and Congo and deposited it along the banks of the Nile River in Egypt. So where do we find that river, for instance, in Detroit?
Mm-hmm.
Right? What is because we're talking about economics, politics, and culture. Dr. Jeffries told us that you must know those three things.
Right.
And those three things are married together. And so if I looked at Detroit, for instance, and I go like, where's the Hapi River in Detroit? Well, it's called tax revenue.
Tax revenue.
It's called real estate.
Yes.
Right. It's called real estate ownership.
Mm-hmm.
It's called control of retail businesses, control of wholesale businesses. When you look at the monies we're spending right now, an African American population, for the last 7 years, it's been over $1 trillion,
mm-hmm.
which makes us the 16th wealthiest nation in the world. But we're about 50 million strong. So we have a large segment, quite a few million of our people, who don't have an opportunity to share in that wealth.
Right.
So where do they find their Hapi River? So if you live in what we might consider today a depressed section of Detroit or LA or Chicago, the first source of the Hapi River would be the tax revenue that those who do work pay into the government. And when that money comes back to the community, it comes back as earmarked monies for monies to the police department, money for school systems, money for sanitation, money for social welfare, money for education. And then you have a large segment of that money that not-for-profit organizations get access to do multiple services in the Black community. The question is, are we harvesting that revenue? That's our Hapi, one
right.
piece of it. But we're not, because most of the nonprofits in our community who really runs the political government, because not-for-profits really undermine the power of your elected official at the local level. But most of the not-for-profit is controlled by people and other ethnic groups that don't live in our community.
Right.
Most of the real estate business in our community is owned by other immigrant groups and other ethnic groups that do not live in our community, do not hire the people from our community, do not reinvest in our community, do not bank in our community. Okay?
Right.
And so when we look at that, we realize that we have to change our minds as African American people on how we view those revenues. And then the other stream of the river is called real estate ownership. When you look at Detroit and you look at Chicago and you look at St. Louis, you go, who owns the bulk of the real estate in the communities in which we live? Mm-hmm. And inadvertently, you realize immediately it's not us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, exactly.
Yet real estate is one of those streams that we would call the Hapi River.
Okay.
The third place would be who's controlling the retail businesses in those communities. Again, it's owned by us. It's owned by outside people. Who control the wholesale business? It's not owned by us. It's owned by outside people. But who's giving them 100% of their earned revenue, it is us. But that earned revenue, because we don't control any of the streams that we would call happy. Those streams could be retail business, wholesale business, flipping of tax revenues, real estate businesses. Because we don't control any of those happy streams, the dollar is turning over in our hands to their hands. Okay.
Yeah, you broke up for a minute there. You said the dollar's turning.
The dollar.
You broke up for a minute there. You said the dollar's turning over. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah. You broke up for a minute there. You said the dollar turns over from our hands to their hands.
And at one time, we make it and we give it to the retailers and the wholesalers in our community.
Right.
And so in order for the dollar to be effective, because the dollar starts out as your riches, but in order for it to become your wealth, it must turn over somewhere between 9 and 12 times in that community.
Right.
And if you don't have control of the real estate, and you don't have control of that stream that's called the retail, or the stream or the happy river that's called the wholesale, and if you don't have control of organizations that can get access to social services and social programs from your tax revenue, and if you are not in control of the revenues that determines how much you pay for policing or education, then you are marginalized. Then you are impoverished. And so when we talk about happy, we're talking about understanding the fundamental function of the river happy in ancient times, and look for concepts, ideas, and principles that serve those functions today in the communities we live in, so that we can utilize it using the same principles, concepts, and ideas that our ancestors said, to build the infrastructure that became the enormous civilization called Kemet. That's in a nutshell what this film is about.
Absolutely.
And we have some extraordinary historians, we have economists, we have psychologists, we have culturalists, we have Egyptologists, we have linguists.
Right.
You have Wade Noble, Dr. Levin Jeffries, Dishi, Baba Haru.
A lot of people. Dr. Julie Malvo. Yep. Let's see here. Now, the people can visit the website hapifilm.com, hapifilm.com, to see the entire cast. And also there is going to be, it's going to premiere worldwide. The film will premiere worldwide July 18th, 2020 at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time online. You will be able to digitally download the film at the end of the premiere. There will be other times that they will show it as well. Go to the website hapifilm.com for more information and to get tickets also. And you can also subscribe to their YouTube channel and their newsletter at their website, hapifilm.com. Let me ask you this question here, Professor Small. And now I've been talking to Taki about this film for probably about 1.5 to 2 years, because we were trying to connect. He was trying to get me in the film, and we just weren't able to connect. But he has me on the media team to help promote the film. You mentioned, when you teach, and you and I've talked about this before, you talk about politics, electoral politics. You talk about the leveraging our economics to control our politics, different things like this. And you mentioned about the police and determining who the police are. Okay. I want you to expound on that, and how does that relate to politics? But also, I remember you saying that back in the 60s, you talked about how the African American community missed an opportunity to become the police officers in our communities, and I think you said the firefighters also, because on one end we're fighting against the police, but didn't realize if we don't become the police, outsiders are going to become the police. Something to that effect. Talk about that, please.
Right. Well, in the 60s, we did wage a very formidable war against criminal police. I don't want to say the police implies one thing. Criminal policing of the African American community. And we got to call it what it is: criminal policing, racist policing of the African American community. And we understand that the police is an extension of the corporate and the banking structure. And part of that corporate and banking structure interest is to keep the African American community economically and politically marginalized so that we don't become a major competitor with them, because we're the second largest ethnic group in America. Most people don't understand how things are counted in America. So let me just go to that for a minute. The largest ethnic group in America are Germans, Americans. The second largest ethnic group in America are African Americans. You understand me? And so the German Americans and the Anglo-Saxon Americans understand that their primary economic competitors, if allowed to have a level playing field, will be the African American population, which would be a formidable competitor in things economics, in banking, in real estate, in insurance, and in retail and wholesale. And so from the days of slavery, they sought to use the police to criminalize the African American community so they can marginalize the African American community economic possibilities. You with me on that? So when we get to the 60s, we've been fighting for a long time against police brutality or criminal police behavior in the Black community. And we won some significant battles. We made them open up the police forces across the country. And one of the mistakes was we had so vilified the police in our fight against them that we didn't want to become that villain. So we didn't want to become the pigs. We fought the pigs, but we didn't want to become the pigs. And that was a mistake. That was a big mistake. We should have rushed in those doors. Now, they didn't just leave the doors open. Once we forced the doors open, they changed the rules and changed the term to minority and said, oh, we don't have women on the force either. Oh, we don't have enough Asians. Oh, we don't have enough Latinos. Oh, we have to do... And they changed the height and all kinds of other things. So the space we opened for ourselves got filled largely by these other ethnics who are mostly from immigrant groups who have more of a bond with the white American political structure than they have with us. And then you had other things that kept us from getting on the force. Every police department in the country have a physical. Our people face those physicals. You know, every police department had written exams. We were doing very good on these and those exams. But the last part is a tripart thing: the physical, the written exams, and then they had something called the psychological, which is where majority white policemen would interview you to see if you qualify psychologically to be a police officer. And this is where more than 60% of our people got knocked out of the game who did try to get on the force. And we didn't have a response to that in most places. We tried in New York, and I remember in some degree to respond to it, but even our response here was pathetic. Because that psychological was nothing more than an interview by a racist who made sure if you came into that as an African conscious person, you weren't going to get on the force. And so we lost that opportunity, both with the fire department for the same reason and the police department. The racism, the false interview process that they put people through. And then the other thing that we're not paying attention in America, most police departments and most fire departments are made up of families. You talked about that before. Groups. So you may come in one community, and that community, the fire department may be dominantly Italian. Another community, it'll be dominantly Irish. Another community, it'll be dominantly Polish. and you find the father working there, the brother working there, the son working there, now the mother working there, and the wife working there. And it's the same thing in the police department. You go into the average precinct, the father either worked there or is working there, the son is working there, the brother is working, the uncle is working, the mother is working. So the white community have made policing a family business.
Right.
You hear what I'm saying? I mean,
I understand.
They made policing a family business. They made the fire department a family business. So these white people who have moved out of the communities that we've lived in, 20, 30 decades ago, that same ethnic group is still predominating the fire department, but they haven't lived in these communities since the 1920s. Mm-hmm. How can that be?
Mm-hmm. And then they get pensions. Yep.
These ethnic groups, the Irish, who was one of the predominant policers, who was a part of that whole slave catching policing agency, still predominates the hierarchy of the police department in places like Chicago and in New York. So you have these marginalized European ethnic groups controlling the fire department, these are the people who came on the boats after the Civil War. You know, this is when you had the big European ethnic arrivals. These were the working class and the lower class of Europe, and most of them were able to move into the policing and the fire department and other kinds of civil service agencies in the communities we live in, and they turned all of these things now into family businesses. Where the father once worked there, the grandfather once worked there, the son is working there, his wife is working there, the mother is working there, and that's why you have a real problem that nobody's looking at.
Right.
In terms of the kind of unity, that blue wall they're talking about.
Right. We're coming up on a break here in about 4.
Where we failed, we should have pushed to take those police positions in our community. And today our community would be policed by black men and women predominantly, like all other communities, is patrolled predominantly by their ethnic group.
Right, right. Hey, Professor Small, are you on a speakerphone?
No.
Okay, all right. Okay, somebody said the voice is kind of muffled. All right. The speakerphones definitely don't work. I was just checking.
Turn the volume down a little bit.
Okay.
Turn the volume.
We're coming up on a break in about 5 minutes. Let me ask you this question. I remember you talking before. You and I were talking about New York City, policing in New York City, and you talked about how stop and frisk policy in the city of New York, and how it was also used as a way to eliminate potential African-American candidates to become police officers. Okay. You remember talking about that? Talk about that for a minute.
Right. Because I was stopped and just twice in my 6th year. Right. So, and what this did, most of the times, once you get stopped, charges come against you: resisting arrest, disorderly conduct, and almost inadvertently assaulting an officer. Those are the 3 charges you probably 90% of the young people got charged with.
And then give us those charges again. Give us those.
Officers with a felony, resisting arrest is a B felony. But once you get a felony, you can't be a policeman.
Okay, right.
Once you're convicted of a felony, you can't vote. Once you're convicted of a felony, you can't have a civil service job. You can't get certain student loans to go to college. You can't go really to certain public-run colleges. So you can't vote. So they use that search and frisk and those types of arrest modalities to remove millions of young black men over the last few decades from the voting rolls.
Right. And what's interesting is that...
But I hope people heard that.
Yeah.
Did y'all hear what I just said?
It's a tool.
Criminalizing and felonizing so many young black men that succeeded in the last 30 years in removing millions of young black men from the voting rolls. You see the politics in it.
Right. Oh, absolutely.
Remove them from being policemen.
Absolutely.
You remove them from being firemen. You remove them from being sanitation workers.
Absolutely. And that was interesting. Oh, go ahead and finish that. And then I'm going to,
no, I just want people to get it, because sometimes we see somebody getting arrested. We don't understand the consequences of that arrest. When the young man has gone to court, never went to jail, but because he can't afford a lawyer, he's got a court-appointed lawyer, and he pleads guilty to a felony that he's going to get 6 months, 5 months, 3 months parole on. But he is now a felon.
Right.
And that is now on his record.
Exactly.
And you do that with enough thousands of people a year. You remove millions of people from the voting rolls, and we are not even paying attention to it.
Right, right. I know we have a couple of minutes before the break, but I remember shortly before William Branton, the former police commissioner in the city of New York, before he resigned, shortly before he resigned. What'd you say?
Yeah, I remember that.
Okay, shortly before he resigned, he had an initiative, a campaign to try to recruit more African-American police officers. But he said he was having a hard time finding African-Americans who could pass the background check, who didn't have felonies, things like that, who want to become police officers. But it's like, wait a second, when you use stop and frisk, you're increasing you're increasing African-Americans, the chances of African-Americans having felonies because of the whole process you just explained.
And that happened, and that process was either cost protection for the same reason. We have not been paying attention to the politics of policing. We were forced to pay attention to the murders because of the destructive thing of the murders, that we didn't see that there are not millions of us out of the voting rolls, not millions of us out of the possibility of being police officers or firemen. This was all deliberate, and it has been going on for decades and decades, and it has been very successful.
Right, right. So when we come back from the break, we're going to talk some more about the movie Hapi. Visit the website hapifilm.com, Hapi, hapifilm.com. And when we come back from the break, also, I want you to talk about the term African American, because I've heard you say before, African is my race, America is my geopolitical place. I'm not giving that up for anybody. So we're going to say that to the other side of the break. Okay. Just stand by. And JT, on the break, see if you can check out Professor Small's audio. See if we can get it straightened out a little bit. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, WFDF in Detroit. I'm Michael Imhotep, speaking with one of my teachers, one of our Grandmaster Scholar Warriors, Professor James Small. We'll be back in a few minutes. All right, everybody, stand by. We're on commercial break. You listen to the African History Network show right here on 9:10 a.m. the Superstation, WFDF, and also on my Facebook, also on our social media platforms, The African History Network, The African History Network on Facebook, on my YouTube channel, Michael Imhotep, IMHOTEP. We're on Twitter, The AHN Show on Twitter. Also, we're also on 9:10 a.m. Superstations Facebook fan page also as well. Okay, everybody, stand by. Visit the website hapifilm.com, HAPI. Also, if you'd like this type of information, you can donate to the African History Network, $ the AHN Show through Cash App, $ the AHN Show through Cash App. The call-in number, if you have a brief question or comment, we're not going to have time for dissertations and manifestos. I'm telling you right now, 313-778-7600, 313-778-7600. is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. 313-778-7600 is the call-in number if you have a question or comment. Okay, we'll see if we can take a few calls here. We'll be back from break in a couple minutes. Also, later in the show, we'll continue to update them with coronavirus, but I also want to deal with Juneteenth and Black Wall Street and why that history is not taught in schools. NBCnews.com had a really good article dealing with that, so we'll talk about that as well. All right, so by here. How's everybody doing? Okay, on YouTube we have Mitchum Wolf, Too Smooth, Ola, Ruby, Sherwin, Mills, gotta move. Just a few people watching us on our YouTube channel. Michael M. Hotep on YouTube. All right, stand by, everybody.
Superstation, a division of Adele Media.
Welcome back to the African History Network show right here on 910 AM, the Superstation. I'm Michael M. Hotep. It is Sunday, June 28th, 2020, and we are live. We're also broadcasting on 910 AM Superstation's Facebook fan page, so follow them on Facebook, 910 AM Superstation.